I hope your day is going well. I hope you are finding the positive side of your day. And I hope that you are taking time out for yourself and taking time out for your own mental health. Taking out time for you. Remember, self-care is not selfish. So, we're going to continue on our series. So, this will be part 3 of CheckPoint steps to winning. And as I said at the start of this series, in the introduction episode, this is really, what I've, steps that I've taken and that I, part of, different, throughout my life and throughout different parts of my life, and kind of like what I've seen work for me, and others that have adopted, some of these that adopted these steps. The feedback is the same. So, when we ended last time, we talked about the next part would be learning communication, learning how to communicate with regards to, giving out that, that clear communication. Okay. The idea, is, kind of jumping right into it here, learning the communication skills of just being clear with your message. A lot of times, if whether you're in business or whether you're interacting with your significant other, or even when it comes to as a parent, people are not mind readers. Okay. I know some might think they are, but people are not mind readers. And so as you lean into learning to be more communicative in your communication, giving a clear message. I mean, especially if you're in a leadership role, or if you're the head of your household, or if you're, if you have a business, or you're a manager, or you're some kind of supervisor, or anything like that. Being clear with your communication and putting that out there, making sure people get an understanding, and not getting frustrated with people just because they ask a question, right? A lot of times we at the end of the day, someone asks, hey, I need a better understanding of this or a better understanding of that. Sometimes you have to be careful not to be immediately where you're combative because they're asking. We rather they ask, right, than not ask. Okay. And so, but putting your message clear, being clear with your message, not kind of beating around the bush with your message. I mean, there's a way to deliver, there's different ways you can deliver your message, especially in a leadership role, in relationships, and in opportunities, right? How I've always been fortunate. I've talked about this several times. I've always been fortunate in a lot of different endeavors and projects. And a lot of times I feel that is a direct result of communicating what I expect, or what the beginning, middle, and end looks like to me. Obviously, at this point in my career, there's a lot of, I deal with a lot of where, someone, if it's speaking engagement, or if it's something where, oh, okay, we're doing some type of agreement, some type of physical agreement where, I'm going to do this, and then you're going to do this. I feel like all of those things that I've done that I've been successful at has come as a direct result because I know what I want, I know what I'm expecting. The individual knows what they're expecting, and we communicate that right out the gate, and obviously, the other side of that is, especially if you're doing some type of interaction where it's an investment or both parties are bringing something to the table. There's, hey, if you don't do this, then you'll get some type of some type of time period to resolve this or rectify it or something before we, part ways or something like that. But be as communicative as you can. Communicate. A lot of times, a lot of things can be solved by just communicating. You could avoid a lot of interactions that might result in legal action or going to court or, even a lot of times, even when you talk to couples, that are either in, therapy or have passed that point and they're going through a divorce, a lot of times it really comes back to the lack of communication, and not being upfront about, that's part of communicating, being upfront about what you expect and, and just being, and that really comes to being truthful about it. So, you got to stay on your communication. Make sure your communication is clear. The other side of it is solve problems. Solve problems. If you want to be successful in any situation, you really want to win. Using that term, that current term of winning, right? You have to solve problems. Don't be the problem. Don't be part of the problem. Be the problem solver. I shared that in the first part of this series about being a problem solver. And so, most of the time you find successful people become solution finders. They, especially if you're working for someone, my hat's off. When I say that, my hat is off. And I commend secretaries, personal assistants, pretty much anybody that's an assistant or administrative assistant, any of that kind of stuff too. Because, a lot of times, really, whoever you're working for, or your boss, your supervisor, or the owner, or the president, or CEO, these people could not. Trust me, they could not do their job without you. Okay, trust me, they could not do their job without you. You are the reason why they're able to do what they do, and a lot of times, it's one of those kind of jobs where you don't always feel like you're special, but you are. Let me go on record to say that anybody that's in those kind of roles, because at the end of the day, most successful people, they become solution finders rather than complainers or doubting Thomases or, this, no. At the end of the day, you have to become a solution finder, a problem solver. If you walk into a situation, you should always walk into a situation as how can I help the situation? How can I add value to the situation? Not how can I criticize or how can I demean, any of that. You should always walk into a situation and say, how can I solve it? How can I make it better? And people should feel that. People should be able to say, oh, when you got involved in this, when you became a part of this, when they should be able to pinpoint the success of that turning by your presence, you being there. And so that's another part of it. I tell people all the time, I jokingly, it's not really, I guess it's over the years, it's not so much a joke. It's become kind of one of those things that start off as a joke, but has now it rings true. A lot of times I go into places and I will, especially when I'm dealing with colleagues, you'll have them wearing multiple hats. You'll have them doing multiple different things. I always tell people that knowing how to do multiple different things, and knowing how to do them well. Don't get me wrong. I don't really encourage so much the multitasking or really, like when you're multitasking from the standpoint of someone's trying to save a buck, so they got you doing it. I'm talking about especially as coming from a background where I've been a project manager and on different projects and things like that. Knowing how to have multiple skills from the standpoint of combining those skills. A lot of times, like I was going into what the so-called joke that's not really a joke anymore is I will tell a person, they got you doing 5 jobs, but only giving you 1 paycheck. It would be nice to get 5 paychecks for those 5 jobs. What you're going to really find is that, combine those. When I say build those multiple skills, I'm talking about what we're talking about here today. Like just for example, what I was just saying about communication and problem solving. Okay, those are the skills I'm talking about. So if you take your communication skills and you blend that with your problem solving skills, okay, and you add that to your leadership skills, well, those are the earmarks for someone that's going to get something done. Someone that's going to be more valuable than someone that might only have one of those skills or none of those skills, right? And so that's where that's important. That's where it's important to have those skills. It's not so much multitasking as it's just like in the previous episode when I was telling you about the colleague that has the multiple degrees, and he's become like a career student. One of the things. I encourage education. I believe in education. I think education is essential. But one of the things that I told him was, it's great that you're getting all this education, all this book knowledge. What he wasn't doing, that, if you listen to the episode, he's since changed, is he wasn't getting any real world with that. Now, as he's went on to get these different degrees, now he has added, he used those degrees actually in real world situations and by getting jobs in those, by getting a job in those fields. And that's now made him better because now he's been able to apply it. He's been able to apply those skills that he has. So that's what you have to do. When I say have multiple skills, we're not so much talking about multitasking as much as we're talking about combining those skills. Each one of those skills represent like you're a superhero, right? And what makes you a superhero is that you're able to do all of these things. You're able to do all of these things. You're able to solve a problem. You're able to communicate well. And so, always, if there's a certain area, you've heard me talk about, if there's a certain area, never be so focused where if you're building something or you're trying to create something, always lean on your team, because there might be individuals in your team that are better at doing something than you are. But you're better at something than they are. And so, that's the whole idea of having, what we talked about in the previous episode of having a strong team. Another part is protect your focus. You got to protect your focus, guys. Don't, I know sometimes, people are going to get mad or people are going to get upset because, you're always working or you're always doing that. You're never, as I talk about, family and spending time with your family and things like that, those things are important. Those things are important, but also the things that you're doing to try to win and to try to accomplish your goals, those are important too. So don't sidetrack them, or don't put them with something else. I always tell people, when I have a meeting with a person, if I know that I'm going to meet a person, and I know I'm going to spend an hour with this person, I don't schedule anything. Probably 30 to 45 minutes before I'm set to have that meeting, and 30 to 45 minutes after I'm set to have that meeting. I don't schedule anything in that time frame. So when I meet with a person, I understand that it's not a quick, it's not necessarily a quick 30-minute meeting or hour meeting. I actually treat it more like a block. Now, some of my colleagues, have said, "Oh, well, that's a lot of time." But at the end of the day, you have to protect your focus, okay? And by protecting your focus, I'm talking about limit your distractions. Okay, limit your distractions. A lot of times, how many times, especially when it comes to going online, how many times have you went and you're doing something online, or whether you're putting together a PowerPoint presentation, or you're putting together a graph or spreadsheet or something, and all of a sudden something will pop up, something from one of your social medias or something like that. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily your email, but it could come from there too. But something from social media, something like that, where it distracts you. It's, something's happening and you get distracted excessively. If this is happening, if it happens once or twice, that's one thing. But if it excessively happens, you have to stay away from that. That's where you have to protect your focus. And a lot of times it's the negative stuff, or, the shocking stuff, case in point, don't get, let's, I understand when someone passes away or something like that, if that happens, let me just put this out there before I say what I'm going to say next. If that happens, you need to, and immediately put a time limit on that, where you get right back to it. So, like, for example, the other day, may rest in peace, but Chuck Norris, the martial art, actor, the martial art instructor and teacher, and played Walker, Texas Ranger, all that. Most people know who Chuck Norris is. He passed away, and this came in a where it popped up. It popped up, and even myself, I was right in the middle, and it was like, oh man, I reacted to it. But the key is, and it's not that that's not something that's important, or that's something that doesn't fall under the negative, especially if you're a fan of the man. But immediately you have to train yourself where you're immediately, oh wow, that's man, and you're reacting to it again, but you immediately have to get back to what you were doing. And then once you're done and you don't have anything else, now you can go and you can dwell on a little bit more, look into the details of it. There's a lot of, especially when you're working at a computer, or you're working on a tablet, or even if you're working on your phone, there's a lot of what they call clickbait. These are things to where the story will be, it's almost like the headline of a story. They give you the headline, and then if you want to dig and dive deeper into it, then you got to turn the page or something like that, or you got to go deeper in the story. But for the most part, you have to be careful with that kind of stuff, because that kind of stuff can become very distractive, and it can happen constantly. If it's happening all the time, more excessively, then that's something that you have to definitely pay attention to, because a lot of times what that does is you don't get back to what you were doing, and now you're behind. Now what you were doing suffers, and you don't get back to what you were doing, and ultimately it hurts you in the long run. So this is another one that you really have to pay attention to. The other side of it all is have more gratitude. Practice. I tell people you should practice. You should definitely practice gratitude. Gratitude should be something that if you should find yourself, appreciating what you have. Stop. Not to be corny, but the old, is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? Okay, if you appreciate what you have, you're going to find that by being grateful and having gratitude towards what you have, it's going to actually improve your perspective. Okay, it's going to, because you're going to look and be like, wow, I could be it could be this way, or it could be worse off, right? So your gratitude, I didn't say content, I said gratitude. You're going to find that that gratitude is going to, you're going to find that's going to improve your perspective, your happiness even. Because ultimately, you're going to look and say, "Wow, you know what? Wow, that situation could be so much worse, or that situation could turn out so much worse." And so you have to appreciate what you have. So that I always tell people, start with that. Even even in your goals, and like I said, sometimes people get it mixed up. There's a difference, between wants, needs. There's a difference between a prayer and a goal. Okay. There's a difference between desire and need, right? And so ultimately, you have to appreciate what you have. Start there. Even if you're praying, right? Even if you're praying for something, okay, you're so focused on I need, or let me get, or how, but you're not looking at what you have. Appreciating what you have is a big important part of winning. It really is, because as you've heard me talk before, previous episode, right, where I was talking about, you might have already a lot of times, especially as you're running your race, right? As you're running your race, you might be closer to the finish line than you think. Or you might have already crossed the finish line, and because you're so focused on running, because you're so focused on the race, you haven't realized it. So sounds crazy, but think about it. Stay persistent. Stay persistent. I can never stress that enough. A lot of people quit too soon, man. I don't care. It might seem like, and when I say too soon, I'm not talking a couple days, a week, a month. Sometimes, there, as I shared with you before, about the colleague of mine that said that, kind of decide what you want and be ready to spend. Be ready to spend the large bulk or your life trying to get it. And so sometimes persistence might be 10 years. Sometimes persistence might be 20 years. As I've said, coming from entertainment, I used to see it happen all the time in the entertainment business, where someone will say, "Oh, this person just burst on the scene," or this person just came out of nowhere, and you find, no, you get to talking to that artist or that athlete or something, and you find out they've been doing this for years. They've been doing it for years. That's what's funny about organized sports. That's what's funny about football, basketball, baseball, hockey. A lot of times these people have been doing it. People always say, "Oh, they're so young. But, by the time they make it to the pros, they've already been doing this for 20, 25 years. Okay. And so, that's why the retirement age is very different in organized sports. A guy is already considered a veteran, and they're not even in their midlife yet. And it's like, but stay persistent. A lot of your success, as I've said many times, a lot of your success comes after many failures. So you failed a lot, and so you have a lot of success. But it's both sides. I mean, you know, if you are a reader like I am, or you follow a lot of the a lot of how some of these companies that are, you know, decades old or half a century old or even a century old, you find that their CEOs and their those individuals, the things they had to do. I did an episode a while back about, you know, the FedEx CEO and you know, and some of these guys, you know, going through multiple bankruptcies before they finally hit. And so that's why I said, be persistent. Persistence always separate the winners from the quitters. Not winners from losers, winners from quitters. Because a lot of people, you only lost because you quit. You understand? The difference between winning and losing for you was that you quit. Okay? That you quit. And I get it. I mean, if you see, I understand lateral moves. I understand every move is not necessarily up or down or front or back. Sometimes a move that in order to go up, sometimes you got to go to the left or to the right before you can make that move up. So sometimes the move is lateral. But what I'm talking about is persistence separates the winners from the quitters. I'm talking about don't give up, don't quit. Moving on, I get that. I get, oh, well, you know what? My desire changed. Okay, can that happen? Yeah, your desire. You know, ask the many students that have went to college and changed their major multiple times. You know, I get it. Your desire change, or your motivation changes. Something, you get inspired. Something happens. And it inspires you, and you change direction. That's different than quitting. That's different, very, very different than quitting. Okay, learn. Again, just like listening to the show here, learn from successful people. Be willing to learn from successful people. Be willing to take out the time, just like I was just talking about. Study those biographies. Study the biographies, study the different interviews. I do this all the time. Especially if it's people in your field, one of my colleagues that's an attorney, he's been very successful as an attorney because he was inspired, of all things, he was inspired by the old TV show Perry Mason. That's where he got the inspiration of wanting to be a lawyer. And then he took that, and he would find every time he would as he would grow in the field, even after he was already a prominent attorney himself. Anytime some of the nationwide attorneys would come to town or have a seminar or put something in the journal. Put something in the journal or publish a paper, he would go like, a dog on a bone to get that information. He would listen to every interview, if these guys were on, Dateline or one of the shows, he would go and he would look at their strategies. He would just go randomly, to the library and just read old cases and things like that. You can learn a lot from people who have achieved great things, and even people that have achieved not so great things. Because again, that goes back to that, not just learning what to do, but what not to do. And my favorite, checkpoint to winning is helping others. I feel like there is so much in that. A lot of times, you've heard me say this time and time again, it's not about a handout. It's about a hand up. If you can help someone, you should help them. If helping others builds goodwill. And It helps with your reputation, and it gives you, at the end of the day, it gives you an overall deeper purpose. Because what's the point? What's the point? It's like, if you're not going to, if we go back to what you're doing or what you're trying to do with your life is your superpower, whatever that is. Okay, what's the point if you're not going to use that to help people? Okay, you should, at the end of the day, that's my favorite, helping people do. And it's not just, donating to a charity or something around the holidays, or going to volunteer at a soup kitchen, at a community center during the holidays. It feeds you. You should be doing something consistently, whether it's, I'm not necessarily saying, we're all busy, right? Where you can do it every day. But if you set aside time to help people on a consistent basis, okay, just imagine. Plus, from the whole goodwill standpoint, regardless of how you believe, you understand, if you're out there doing good from a goodwill standpoint, then you're stacking the deck in your favor to have some good come your way. Not that I'm saying, wait a minute, not that I'm saying that should be your only motivation, but you get what I'm saying. You get, it is part of it. You're due because you're due to receive because you've applied. And so, that, helping others is another big one in the checkpoint. As we're embarking on Mental Health Month, another big one that I like is take care of your mind. Protect, and take care of your mind. Remember, as I said at the top of the show, self-care is not selfish. So take care of your mind. If you need to take care of your mind by meditating, you want to write stuff down, you want to start journaling, or any of that kind of stuff, or quiet thinking, you're going to find that taking care of your mind, being aware. I don't care if it's listening to, obviously listening to the show here, Conscientious Conversation, or listening to someone else in the space, the personal improvement space. You're gonna find it's gonna improve your clarity. It's gonna improve. Sometimes it's like taking a shower, taking a bath, right? It's gonna improve your clarity and your decision making too. You're gonna find that you're able to, because you might hear something, oh, you know what, I'm dealing with that current situation now. And that information, you've been racking your brain on how to deal with it, and because you wrote it down, because you're meditating on it, because you're quietly thinking about it with no distractions, you're not letting anything interfere with your mind while you're doing it, you're able to make a sound decision. And that sound decision is that's exactly what you were shooting for. So that's the other part of it. Take care of your mind, and alongside of that, as you're taking care of your mind, I would say another one is build your brand. Whatever your brand is, whatever you stand for, whatever is your kind of like your tagline, your slogan, your creed, your thing that you stand by. Go ahead and when you build that up. That way, because if you're not known for something, then you'll be known for nothing. Okay, and you remember I there was actually an episode we did. I want to say maybe about a year ago, where it talked about your rep is everything. Your reputation matters. Your reputation matters, and you have to protect it. Actually, it wasn't a year ago. It was just, I want to say, less than 6 months ago. It was done. But go back and check that one out. I think you get a lot out of that. But your reputation matters. Be known for reliability. If you're reliable at something, let people know you're reliable. If you have certain skills, let people know you have those skills. And and protect your integrity. As I've said before, it does matter how you get there. It does matter how you get there, because that's going to ultimately determine how you stay there. Okay, your integrity matters, and if you believe in something and you don't want to, you don't want to turn away from that, then stay on that. Stay on that. Don't get me wrong. Understand some opportunities might, it was something that I experienced in the entertainment business, where sometimes when you're doing things, especially a lot of my a lot of band leaders, if you've ever been in a band. You kind of know where I'm coming from with this. There's been times where people say, "Oh, well, they'll tell the lead singer, "Oh, we want you, but we're not interested in your band," or "We want you, but we don't want the producer," or and so those are tough. Those are tough, But if as I said, if you have a plan, if you have the skills and you stand by your integrity, you'll be able to overcome challenges like that and navigate through challenges like that. The other big one I always talk about is tracking your progress. Don't be afraid to write it down. Don't be afraid to cross it out. If you have a punch list or a checklist, don't be afraid to draw a line through those things you've already accomplished, through some of those things that you've already overcame. This is going to help with knowing where you're at. Remember, I said sometimes you could just be putting in the work and not realize that you've already accomplished it, or how close you are to accomplishing it. You should review your goals on a regular basis, whether it's, you don't necessarily have to do it daily unless it was a daily goal, but weekly, monthly, you look over that sheet. See what's working. See what you need to improve on. See what you need to adjust. Things like that. This way you're tracking that progress, and this is going to ultimately work to your favor, because at the end of the day, that's kind of like your own inward, for lack of a better term, that-a-boy. Where someone says, "Oh man, good job," or a self-patting on the back, right? Where you can look and say, "Wow, okay, I didn't realize I already knocked that, I already did that." Or it's always beneficial to do that, because that's going to kind of keep you right where what like I said, what do you need to adjust, what do you need to improve on, and things like that. And so you're going to find that all this kind of comes together, and as it comes together, each one of these are ongoing. This isn't just like, I do it once or whatever. The idea is making these steps a direct part of your life. And as they become a direct part of your life, they're going to be habits. You're going to find that it's more of a habit. You don't even think about it, and you do it. And others, you're going to see how that influences impact people around you, because people are going to see that change. And a lot of times, you yourself now are going to be able to be the teacher. You're going to be able to teach it now, because you've been doing it. Other people, when they ask, you could always tell them, "Hey, go listen to the show," or you can always tell them, "Hey, go read this book," or go, go look at this. But a lot of times, because they know you and you're their personal connection, it's going to go further than someone that they don't know, or someone that they're being introduced to. You should go listen to this guy, or you should go listen to this message. You're a success story that they could see, that they can touch, and so the value of you saying it stands to have more ground. So that's all the time we have for this episode. Our next episode we will continue on the checkpoint steps to winning. When we in that next episode, we're gonna talk about how to stay adaptable, and how to adapt as these steps start to become part of your life, how to stay adaptable and committed to those steps. So, you've been listening to Conscientious Conversation. I'm your host, Will Prophet. Go and stay positive on the day. Protect that positivity that you're experiencing. Okay, and do not waver in any way, and do not let anyone steal your joy.